Welcome back to another video. It's fantastic to have you here. My name is Bones and this will be the second episode of my 2D platformer tutorial series. Let's get started. In this episode we're gonna take a look at the basic enemies and player attacks. I'll make some discount Goombas and then I'll import them into Unity. Drag the sprite into the scene and then create a prefab of it. Give it a rigid body 2D and box collider 2D. Now create a new C# script. I'll name it Enemy Goomba. We'll create the float speed and rigid body 2D RB variables. Since RB is a public variable, we can grab a reference for it directly in the inspector. Set your speed variable to something you feel is appropriate. In the update function we'll say transform.translate vector2.left times speed times time.delta time. Your enemy should now move to the left. Now it's time to make them change direction if they hit something. Create a bool named facing left and write down the void on collision enter 2D function. We'll now check if the enemy collided with anything except the player. If they did, then we'll equal the facing left boolean to not itself. This boolean will help us figure out whether the enemy is facing left or right. We'll say if collision not equals null and collision.collider.compare player and not collision.collider.compare ground. Then facing left equals not facing left. We'll now say if facing left, then GameObject.transform.rotation equals quaternion.euler 0, 0, 0 for all three values, else GameObject.transform.rotation equals quaternion.euler 0, 180, 0. Make sure your player has the player tag. Awesome! Now when your enemy hits a wall, they will flip and walk the other direction. However, when they hit the player, they will keep on walking in the same direction. Now it's time to create a health script for your player. Open your scripts folder and create a new C# script. I'll name it player health. We'll write an int HP variable. I'll equal it to 2. Then we'll write the void on collision enter 2D function. We'll check if the player collided with an enemy and decrease their HP by 1. If collision.collider.compare enemy minus HP. Make sure your enemy has the enemy tag. In the update function we're going to check if the player's HP reached 0. If it did, then I'm going to display it in the console using debug.log. We'll handle what happens when the player dies in the next episode. For now, let's work on the player's attacks. In the Super Mario Bros. Game, you can either stomp your enemies or shoot them with various projectiles. Give your enemy a child empty object and add to it a small box collider 2D set as a trigger. Create a new C# script, I'll name it stomped, and add it to this empty object. I'll write down a float force and a void on trigger enter 2D function. We'll say if trigger.compare player, then rigid body 2D player RB equals trigger.getComponent rigid body 2D. Player RB.add force vector2.up times force. I don't want to simply make the enemies vanish when they get stomped. Instead, I will disable their box collider so they fall and destroy them once they are off camera. We'll create a bool stomped equals false and write the onBecameInvisible function. Here we'll say stomped equals true, and here we'll say if stomped is equal to true, then destroy transform.parent.gameObject. We'll say box collider 2D box collider equals transform.parent.gameObject.getComponent box collider 2D. Box collider.enabled equals false. You can now stomp enemies to your heart's content. That is all I have for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to drop a like and leave a comment. Helps out me, helps out the channel, and most importantly, it shows me that these tutorials are helpful to you. Again, thank you for watching and goodbye.